Since nearly the turn of the previous century, the Hotel Ashtabula has been a place for travelers to stay, for parties, wedding receptions, and civic and business meetings. But for the past 30 years, most of the building remained unused, deteriorating. That is, until Signature Health took over the main avenue building in Ashtabula and brought back its luster. Let's take a look at Hotel Ashtabula 2015 style.
I'm Paul Brickman with Signature Health, and welcome to our office at the Hotel Ashtabula. And we're in our lobby right now. And what we did with this was, well, just a little bit of history. This building was built in the early 1900s, and since 1985, it has remained dormant. Originally, we were here in Ashtabula, and we started to grow to the point where we've had 3 separate offices. And it was in our best interest to combine all of the 3 offices into one. It was more convenient, obviously, for our staff, but also for our clients. And so this opportunity came along after about 5 years of searching, and the opportunity came along that we could have this sections demoed and rehabbed and brought up to speed. And so if you can see the windows behind me, those are all original windows from the actual hotel. So we're standing in the lobby. Those are the actual windows. The floor is the actual floor that was in the hotel, and we brought that back to life. And then as we look over a little bit further to the right, you'll see the staircase that goes up to the mezzanine. And that's the original steps, original woodwork. We kept all of that. And we wanted to keep as much as we could of the feel of the hotel, and also make it comfortable for our clients when they come in. So,
what did this place look like after 30 years of dormancy?
It was interesting. There was a lot of debris, a lot of neglect. Plaster everywhere. We had to do a lot of replastering and bringing that back. One of the things that was interesting too was the claim to fame for this hotel was that it was fireproof. And what that meant was that there was cement floors, cement walls, cement ceilings. And so the folks that had to do the demo work really had to work hard. It was really a insurmountable task. So if you can picture this as just a wide open room that was just dirty and run down. Some of the windows were broken. The floor was an absolute mess. We weren't sure whether we were going to be able to keep it or not. So there was a lot of work that had to be done here. And as we go upstairs, you'll see, I can take you up to the 5th floor, and you can actually see what it used to look like before we rehabbed it. So, okay. As you look over and you can see where folks check in, this was actually the place where when people were coming to get their room, they would check in. And it's the actual marble, the actual wood. And if you can imagine an old-time hotel where there were just slots where keys were put in, those were still there. Although they weren't up on the wall still there, they had been knocked down. And so we wanted to keep that part the way it was. This office has 6 floors, and right now we are occupying the first 4 floors. Where we are right now is we're on the 5th floor, and wanted to show you this because what we see behind me is that this whole area has been demoed in the sense that there used to be a series of walls here where this used to actually be where the rooms were, and you can get a sense that the rooms are rather small. Yes. They would start here. Here's where a wall was. There was a window, and then there was a wall right here. So maybe it's 10 feet wide. And what you have to remember is back then they had community bathrooms.
Yeah.
So each room didn't have a bathroom. So at the end of each of the hallways was the bathroom, and they would have a bathtub and stuff in there, and that's where. So this is where people stayed, and when we go downstairs, you'll see how we rehabbed it. So now we've converted this into a lot of office space that we needed. These are all new windows here. I mentioned downstairs, those are the original windows. The windows that were up here were all rotted and we couldn't do anything with them. And so these are all, obviously they're energy efficient and they're really good quality.
Is this an example of what some of the rooms or the floors looked like before you?
Oh, yes. It was, if you can imagine, these are all cement walls. And so these guys are in here just tearing the walls down. They would take it out to the window over here where they had those chutes that all the stuff would go down. And I'll tell you, these guys worked really hard to get this place cooking, and also, obviously there was no heat, and so these guys are working through the winter. They have plastic over the windows, although, the wind starts blowing, and those windows are banding, going back and forth. So part of what I understand happened was that in the 60s there was a fire in a building that no longer exists, that was next door here. And in order to fight the fire, they had to bring the hoses in through the lobby up the stairs here to spray the fire down. And I was told that there was a lot of smoke and fire damage as a result, and the actual hotel never really recovered from that. Although it did stay open downstairs with the restaurant and the lobby area to 1985. And so if you can look right out this window here, that's the old Shea Theater right there. I've never been in it, but we're part of the Downtown Development Association, and I know at meetings they've talked about they've got a committee together to see whether or not they can bring the Shea Theater back, which would be kind of neat. Because in a way, we're one of the cornerstones in trying to bring back Main Street.
Right.
And so we're proud to be part of that, and we're proud to be part of the Downtown Development Association, and working with all the other merchants along the street. So the other thing is that on the other side, where our parking lot is, I was told that there used to be a theater over here that burnt down.
Oh, really?
And some of the stories that I heard when we had our open house, a lot of folks came in and everybody had a story. They were talking about people coming for their proms, for their weddings, people that used to work here. There was one couple that came in, I'm guessing they were in their 80s. And so when they came in to see the place, I said, we have an elevator, you can take it up. And they both looked at me like, what are you talking about? They said, this is where we got married. And we walked up those stairs to get married. We're going to walk up right now. And it was just adorable to see them go upstairs and to look, it brought a tear to my eyes,
Yeah.
And
what memories?
Oh, it was unbelievable. And so people would come in and they would, we have matchbooks covers, we have a plate, they brought some of that memorabilia in, and eventually we're going to be able to display that in time. But people would just come and sit in the lobby and just soak it in. And one guy was saying how he used to be a bellhop and run out and bring the luggage in and hope that he'd get a tip, a quarter tip would be big, and so this was, from what I understand, this was like one of the in spots in downtown Ashtabula where people would come and hang out in the lounge and have dinner, and there was a lot of weddings and proms that happened here, and we were kind of proud that we could keep the mezzanine, and we had to do some extensive rehab in the ballroom. Floor had buckled up, and there was no saving that. And the ceiling, there was water damage and that. So we kept the contours of the ceiling, and we kept a lot of that stuff. Now we're on the second floor, which is the mezzanine area, and as you look over to the left here, you'll see that these are the steps that we saw downstairs. So you can either walk up the stairs here, and or you can take the elevator that's over to the left. And so these are the steps that people came up when they were here for their proms, weddings, whatever. And right through those doors is what used to be the ballroom. now we're using that as we have movable walls, so we use those as group rooms, but we also use them for larger activities like what we have going on today, where we're doing a workshop on working with kids whose parents have mental illness, and understanding how to work with the families and how to work with the kids who, they're young kids. They don't know why mommy or daddy are going through what they're going through. And so, as you can tell, it's a very interesting topic. We have 90 people here.
There's an awful lot of people.
Yeah, we've got 90 people here, and we've got people from obviously from Ashtabula, also from Lake County.
These all signature employees?
No, there's some signature employees, but the rest, out of the 90 people that are here, probably 70 of them, 75 of them are people that work in other agencies, people that work in hospitals, people that work in schools, people that work in we have people from churches. Like I said, other agencies, they're all here because this is an important workshop. And we do this workshop, we're doing this workshop in conjunction with Children's Services. We work closely with them. So what I want to do now is, we are on the mezzanine floor, and one of the interesting things that happened is we were in the early stages of construction. Tanya Burnett, matter of fact, is here today. She's the executive director of Children's Services. I was talking with her one day, and she said, "Well, we could use a child advocacy center." And I had no idea what that was. And what I found out is that children who are sexually abused have to be interviewed, and also in some cases have to be medically examined. And what would happen is that if children would have to be interviewed here, then they would have to be taken down to Youngstown, to a hospital down there, where they would be medically examined and also interviewed again. And so can you imagine, there's these kids that are 5th grade or, 5, 6 years old, they end up in a police car or in a detective car with a stranger, taking them down there. So these kids are re-traumatized over and over. And it was also hard on the police departments who couldn't free up a police officer to do that. And so when Tanya asked, I said, you know what? I said, I think it's important. I think it's something that we should do. I went back and talked to Jonathan Lee. John's our CEO and president and the person that started this whole thing. And I said, John, this is what they need. And I said, this is something we have to do. And John didn't even hesitate. He goes, heck, we're going to do it. And so this will be the first child advocacy center in Northeast Ohio. Lake County doesn't have one. Cuyahoga County doesn't have one. Geauga County doesn't have one. And so it's kind of neat because a lot of these child advocacy centers are put in hospitals. We're unique because it's going to be in a mental health agency. So can you imagine, we can do the interviews, and we've completed the first phase where we can now do the interviews. The next phase is going to be to set up to do the medical exams, and we're in the process of getting one of our nurses trained to be able to do that, and we'll be consulting with a medical doctor who has specialty training in this to be as a consultant for us. So children will be able to be interviewed here, and also if they need to have the exam done here, and they don't have to repeat the story over and over again. Right. They don't have to go through the trauma.
They drive 90 miles and 90 miles.
Right. And the other nice part is that if the child needs services, because of what they've been through, or if the family needs services for what they've been through, we'll be able to offer it right here for them. So they will already know us. Hopefully they'll feel comfortable with us, and we'll be able to help that child and that family heal, which is extremely important. Right. Signature Health, we started about 21 years ago, and there was just several of us that started in Lake County, and primarily we worked in schools, providing groups and providing some services there.
Here she is. Okay.
Then we started to expand, where we had a small office in East Lake, and at that office we would see people individually, and we began to hire a couple more people. One of the people that hired us in Chardon High School, principal there, ended up being the principal out in Ashtabula, and called us one day and said, we need some help out here. Why don't you come on out? So we started to work with Ashtabula City Schools, and we hooked up with a doctor who had some space, Dr. Cook, and she was very gracious to give us space. And that's how we really became established out here. And, and then we began to turn more from just working with chemical dependency to more mental health. And we began to hire more people, and we gradually took off in that respect. And we also had an opportunity in Cuyahoga County with a small agency there who reached out to us and said, we have some space. So we established a small office in Cuyahoga County. So if you take those beginnings 21 years ago with just several of us starting, if you turn the clock today, we have, obviously this office, we have about 32,000 square foot office in Lake County and Willoughby, and we have about a 20,000 square foot office in Cuyahoga County. And so it started out with just several of us. We now have about 295 employees. And out of those 295 employees, we have about 45 of those are what we call prescribers. They're either psychiatrists, that are medical doctors, or we also have nurse practitioners, which serve the same role as a psychiatrist in most respects. So we really have a strong component with that. And as we grew, we expanded more services with treatment. Like right now, we do a lot of treatment for opiate addiction. So people that are hooked on opiates, medication, and also with heroin. We do Suboxone treatment here, and we also do it in all three of our sites. And that's been well received, although unfortunately it's a very needed program. But we're very proud of what we're doing with that. And we also expanded in the sense that we now do child, adolescent, and adult services, where primarily we were doing adolescent. Now we've expanded. So we have child psychiatry, child services. We also have services all the way through for adults too. So we get people from all over. We get people that just come in that need help and are a little confused in their life. We get referrals from the courts. We get referrals from children's services. We do a lot of work with hospitals that have behavioral health units. Where people are hospitalized because of their disease, their illness, and we work closely with making sure that they're reintegrated back into the community, and also to make sure that they have their medication. And part of our process too is that we work trying to educate people about what mental illness is, because when we talk about physical illness, we all talk about it. Sure. We talk about having a cold. We talk about getting sick and throwing up and so there's degrees of physical illness. Sure. You can have a cold, or you can have stage 4 cancer. And so if we look at it in terms of mental health, we can be mildly depressed, which we all have been depressed in our lives. If you live in Cleveland with the Cleveland Browns, you get some depression.
With the Indians these days.
Don't say the Indians. Come on now. I say that jokingly, but we've all gone through some mild depression, and we come out of that. But in some people, the depression is a little more severe, and it becomes a real handicap for them. They can't come out, they can't get out of the house, they can't get out of bed, they can't make decisions, and so the mental illness has progressed too. So you can have just mild depression all the way through with somebody that's schizophrenic. Which is a very serious mental illness, and everything in between. So if we understand that if we feel sick, we can get treatment. We see our doctor, we do whatever we need to do, medication, whatever it may be. Same thing happens for mental health. We come in here, we see a doctor. If we need medication, we can get medication. If we need to talk with somebody and do some therapy, we do that. If we need to help them with a wellness program, we can offer that too, to have them physically feel better, and it will help their mental health too. So as we were talking about the Child Advocacy Center, the room that we're in right now, which is just off of the mezzanine area, this is a waiting room where the child can come in, family members can come in and privately wait. They won't be downstairs. We have the ability to bring them in the back door if the family requests, because we're very sensitive to the sensitive nature of what we're dealing with here, and so we offer that. One of the things that we have here is that we do have a camera and a microphone in this room. Okay, and I will explain that to you as we go along, but we want to observe what's going on with that family from the moment that they walk in the door. And so that's why we have the camera and the microphone, so we can make sure everything's cool, everything's safe, because in some cases we don't know who the perpetrator is. And it may be a family member, maybe a parent, sibling, you know, aunt, uncle, neighbor, you don't know who it is. So we would just want to make sure. So as we look down the hallway here, this is where we decided to put the Child Advocacy Center down this hallway. And again, this is totally isolated from the rest of our services. Again, because of the nature of what we deal with. An important part of the Child Advocacy Center is that what happens is that a complaint will happen. Someone will call the police, or someone will call Children's Services. Someone will talk to someone in a church or whatever. And what happens is that the calls have to go through Children's Services, where Children's Services will do a preliminary investigation. If the facts that are presented indicate that a child will need to be interviewed and the potential for police action or criminal action may be imminent, then Children's Services uses this facility where they actually do the interviews. Okay, they have people that are trained. We are getting people to be trained in trauma-informed interviewing techniques, so that they can bring the child in here. We're doing the interviews. We've done about 30 of them in about 2.5 months, but we're still, you know, we want to make this more kid friendly. Right. You know, we want to put a mural on the wall and do those kinds of things, or get a smaller table and that. But for now, it's working. And as you can see up there is a camera, and that's a stationary camera. And that camera can pick up the child and the interviewer on one screen. And it's important that happens, because you don't want an attorney or someone saying, you know, you were leading that child along. So it would be like me saying, Jimmy, did so-and-so touch you? And I'd be shaking my head, yes. And so if everybody's on the camera, it's there. Right. And you can't change what you see on the camera. And so nobody can say, well, you were leading that child by whatever. And then up in this corner, you will see that there's another camera. And this camera is controlled all the way across the lobby in the viewing room. And it's controlled actually by a joystick, where you can move the camera around, you can zero in, you can zoom in, zoom out, whatever you need to do with that. Okay, and down here what I want to show you, this is where it's actually recorded. The actual interview is recorded. And so at the end of the interview, we burn a DVD. And this DVD is then, we can make as many copies as we need of it, but primarily it's given to the police department. And if the prosecutor is involved, which often they are, it's given to the prosecutor so that they have a copy of the interview. We have a copy that stays here, but it only stays here for a limited amount of time. So the benefit is that, you know, if you're an investigating officer, you have this interview, you've got it on a DVD, you know, it's admissible in most courts. And if somebody has a defense attorney saying, oh, this, or whatever, they take a look at the DVD, all of a sudden things begin to change. And the actual story begins to unfold. So this is kind of neat. This was a heck of an investment on our part to be able to have the right equipment so that... I shouldn't be have the right equipment so that we can do this in a color, high quality way.
I would think that there would be times where if a parent was involved afterward, you might try to maybe talk the child into, that really didn't happen, did it?
You know, I hear story after story about those kinds of things. You know, and you know, sometimes a perpetrator will say, you know, thanks to you, I'm going to be locked up, and you know, you'll never see me again, or you know, whatever. And that's the underbelly of what we deal with at times. And again, our intention and the intention of Children's Services is to protect that child and make sure that their voice is heard, and make sure that things are followed up on the way that they will. Every police department in Ashtabula County, the mental health board, the prosecutor, sheriff, have all signed on to this. And so there's a memo of understanding that everybody agrees to this need. And it's kind of neat to see everybody on board with this. So, you know, it's being utilized. We had one situation already where we got a call from Homeland Security who wanted to interview an adolescent for some things that were happening with child pornography. And one of the messages has to be real strong that, you know, there's a lot of, you know, every kid's got a camera or an iPhone,
right?
And sometimes they're taking some suggestive photos of themselves.
Yeah.
And in this particular case, this person took some suggestive photos, was sending them to somebody who they thought was a boy in Texas, and next thing you know, that it was on the internet in Europe.
Wow.
And so I don't know how Homeland Security did it, but boom, bam, boom, they're here. And they had somebody come in from Detroit. They interviewed her, you know, and she had no idea. It felt, you know, it's like this girl. Oh my gosh, you know. But you know, that's a message that we have to get out to all the teenagers. That, you know, you take these pictures and you may send them somewhere, and who knows where they're going to end up. And if you take those pictures and it's on your phone, and the police investigate it, guess what? You lose your phone because you've got pornography, child pornography on there. So, we've had Brant Cook, who is with the Attorney General's Office and Crimes Against Children. He's in charge of that program. He was just recently up here and spoke at the Children's Services have an annual luncheon that we hosted here, and he spoke about the need for a child advocacy center, and took a tour here afterwards, and said that he actually goes into schools now and tells the kids this is the reality, and says, you know, look, this is what your text is going to say. Let me show you a picture of the guy that sent it. You know, and they're thinking, oh, it's some, you know,
right.
They sent him a picture of this cute kid, you know, and a football, you know, and here's some, you know, old guy with, you know, one tooth left in their mouth, and, you know, and so we're going to have them come back up and address that with the students and keep spreading the word that way. So that's one of the unfortunate things with technology. So we just left the interview room. Now we're in what's going to be the exam room. You can see we're not ready yet. Like I said, phase one we've completed, where we're starting to do the interviews. The next phase would be in this room. We're going to have a medical exam room, all the equipment that we need, and a high definition camera that's going to be placed on a be able to be moved, and because we have to do exams and we have to take high definition photos and to see if there's any damage done to a young person, and that's the hard part, you know. But we've got a nurse that's in training. It's just wonderful. We'll make the kids feel at ease. We'll have this room decorated so that they will just get the sense that they're seeing their nurse, and it's just kind of an exam, and you know, and try to make it as comfortable as we can for the kids, because this is all part of the investigation that has to go on, and so we're going to be able to do it the right way with excellent equipment. And we're in the process right now of looking at some grants that are going to help us pay for some of that, because it is very expensive. And I would say within the next 3 or 4 months, we'll have this room equipped. Our nurse will have completed the training that she needs to complete in order to become qualified as what's called a SANE nurse, a sexual abuse nurse, and I can't think of the rest of it, who specializes in working with kids. So our staff is on board with this. They're you know, they understand the importance of it. You know, and it's just something we have to do. So, and we'll be able to do it really a good job here in Ashtabula. So as I mentioned, across the lobby is where we do the actual interview, and while that interview is going on, we have the camera and we can see exactly what's going on here in a big, large screen television. So sitting at this table would be people from Children's Services, Police Department, prosecutor, if there's any other important people that need to be part of it.
So they're watching this live.
So they're watching this live as it happens. Yeah, and we have the joystick so we can zoom in and out. If there may be some questions that aren't being asked, So normally what happens is the person taking the interview will take a break. We'll just, honey, I'll be right back, and they would come out that door. We would have people meet them down in the waiting area or out here and suggest certain questions or directions that we may want to go, because the police may have some information they need to collaborate.
Right.
And so if we can ask them, we've had situations where we've asked kids to draw the room so that they can actually see what the layout of the room looks like, so that they know exactly where the bed was or where whatever the situation might be. And then the person goes back in and then does finishes up the interview. And it's nice because it's a nice place for the folks to come in and sit and relax. It's a professional environment. It looks really, it's nice.
Comfortable chairs.
It's comfortable. We may laugh about that, but we're a product of our environment.
Right.
And if we have a nice professional environment, then I think it cranks things up a level, and that's what we try to do here. And so the interviews happen, the CD's burned, given to whoever needs to get one. Children's services will deal with whatever they need to deal with. Our role is just to provide the facility and to provide the expertise that they may need in doing some of the things that need to be done with the families or the kids. And so it's really interesting because they've done more interviews in the last 2.5, 3 months. They've done 30, which is, and what that indicates is that what I found out is that sometimes these things happen and the parents don't want to pursue it because they don't want to have to go to Youngstown, and as much as that, it would be like, what,
Yeah.
But some families just, that's the way they think. And so this way, if we can say that's all you have to do, come over to Signature Health, they're more likely to do that. And police departments are supporting this because they don't have to take an officer off the road. They can just come down and meet with the prosecutor, witness the interview that's going on, and develop their case rather quickly. And so it's kind of a win-win situation. And we really enjoy working with Children's Services. One of the things, the second thing we're doing with Children's Services is that we just purchased the Snodgrass building. Those of you in this area would be familiar with that. And we're going to be putting in a 16-bed child and adolescent residential facility for kids that are wards of Children's Services. Right now, for example, if they have to take a child out of the house, there's no place in Ashtabula to put, if they don't have a foster home, of which there are very few, really, they have to place them out of county. And they're spending almost $2 million a year doing that. So again, they approached us and asked us, and John and Lee said, we were familiar with this building, we'll go ahead and do that. So our goal is before the start of next school year, we'll have that facility open. That means as many as 16 children can stay there that don't have to be placed out of county. Obviously, we charge them, but it's going to be a lot less than what they're having to pay now. And the other unique thing is that the case managers don't have to drive down to Youngstown. They don't have to drive to Columbus. That's all I have to do is come right over to, to Main Avenue, and they can see the child. So, and it's going to help with reintegration of the children back with their families too. And so, again, it's another kind of a thing where we're working jointly with them, and something that we think is in the best interest of kids, best interest of families, and also the best interest of Ashtabula. So Ashtabula County has something to be proud of. When we talk about the Child Advocacy Center, something to be proud of about having a group home for these kids, and keeping them close to home and saving some taxpayer dollars in the meantime. We will also be working closely with Judge Campley's over at Juvenile Court in some of those situations.
I've talked to him a little bit about before after he was elected, and he was that's really something that he's interested in, concerned about, and has some ideas about.
Yeah, and so he's aware of what we're doing and is very pleased with that, and have the ability to be able to utilize that. for kids that come to him through children's services, or kids that may need children's services. He can now refer to children's services. They can then use the residential facility rather than sending them off somewhere. And the closer it is, the services are to the agency, the more they can be managed, the more they know what we're doing. You send a kid to Youngstown, you hope that the people down there are providing the service that they say they're going to provide. You hope that they're doing those things. Here they can come in anytime and see what we're doing. We have a reputation of providing those good kinds of services. And so, the door's going to always be open to them to come in anytime and make sure that, see what's going on, see how clean the place is, and, try the food, all that kind of stuff, because we want to create a nice home atmosphere for these kids.